When we think about the end of a long relationship, we often imagine a huge scene. We think of loud voices that make the walls shake and the neighbors wonder what is wrong. We picture plates being thrown across the kitchen floor, shattering into 1,000 tiny pieces of glass. We remember the mean and hurtful things people scream at each other when they are boiling over with anger. These moments are very sad and they hurt a lot, but believe it or not, they are not the scariest part of losing someone. Even when people are yelling, there is still a tiny spark of heat between them. It shows that both people still have skin in the game. They still care enough to be angry. They are still fighting to be heard, even if they are doing it in a messy, painful way. That anger is like a bridge made of fire, but it is still a bridge that connects two hearts. The truly terrifying moment is much quieter than a scream. It starts with a very small, hollow sound, almost like a tiny click of a key turning in a lock. This is the sound of a deeply caring person, someone who feels everything so strongly, finally switching off their heart. It is the heavy, thick silence that fills the room after that person stops caring. Imagine a person who used to feel every single one of your pains as if they were their own. They were the one who cheered the loudest for your smallest wins and held you when you cried. Suddenly, they feel absolutely nothing for you at all. It is as if a bright, warm light has been turned off in a room that used to be cozy. Please stay with me for a bit longer, because understanding this shift is the most important thing you can do. It changes every rule about how love and power work that you have ever been told. A long time ago, there was a very wise man named Carl Jung. He was one of the greatest explorers of the human mind who ever lived. He spent his whole life trying to understand why we do the things we do. One of the most amazing things he discovered is that our inner selves do not just break into pieces when life gets too difficult. Instead, they go through a total change. They turn into something completely new. When a person who gives too much of themselves finally hits their limit, they do not just have a bad afternoon or a quick cry. They go through a deep, total transformation of their spirit. They change from being a warm, open person into someone who is cool, very precise, and completely out of reach for the people who spent years taking their kindness for granted. They become like a mountain that is impossible to climb. We live in a world that makes a very big mistake about kindness. Many people believe that because someone is gentle and caring, their heart is like a well that will never run out of fresh water. They look at a person's patience, their ability to forgive over and over again, and their willingness to carry other people's heavy burdens, and they think it is a free gift. They treat this kindness like a resource they can use up forever, like a battery that never dies. But they are wrong. Every well has a bottom, and once you reach the mud at the bottom, the water stops flowing. Once that happens, everything in the relationship changes forever. There is no more water to give, and the well dries up for good. Carl Jung's research showed us that the human mind always wants to stay in balance. This is a basic rule of how we are made as people. Think about a seesaw. If you push a caring person to ignore their own needs for too long, if you make them hide their boundaries and swallow their anger day after day, those feelings do not just disappear. They do not evaporate like a puddle in the sun. Instead, they sink deep down inside and start to change into something else. They sit under the surface of the heart and grow heavier and stronger until they finally reach a breaking point. It is like steam building up in a pot with a lid that is stuck on too tight. This is where the real danger starts to grow. When the pressure inside a person's soul becomes too much for them to carry, the mind tries to save itself from breaking. It does this by flipping the person completely to the opposite side. Jung had a very special name for this. He called it enantiodromia. It is a long word, but it just means that a force has become so strong that it turns into its own opposite. Think of a rubber band that has been pulled and stretched until it is as thin as a thread. It cannot stay stretched out forever. Eventually, it snaps back, with a force that is just as strong as the tension that was holding it. For a person who loves deeply, this means they eventually hit a solid wall. In that one exact moment, the love and the caring do not just slowly fade away over time. They vanish instantly, like a flame being blown out by a cold wind. This change is not a slow walk down a hill. It is not something where you can sit down, have a long talk, and fix things with a simple apology. It is a total and immediate shutdown of the bridge between two souls. This is the silent shift that always catches people by surprise. One minute, the caring person is your biggest fan. They are the ones who make you feel like your feelings are the most important thing in the world. They help you carry your heavy bags through life as if they were their own. You have probably grown very used to them being your safe place to hide, even after you have been mean or unkind to them. You think they will always be there to catch you, but in the very next minute, you are like a ghost to them. You can cry as loud as you want. You can beg for one more chance, and you can make all the big, shiny promises in the world about how you will change your ways, but it is too late. The part of them that used to receive your love has been taken apart piece by piece because they spent so much of their life being completely in the relationship. When they decide to be out, they are out forever. There is no middle ground left for them to stand on. They are not doing this to be mean or to hurt you back. They have simply moved into a state where they are trying to survive, and in that state, you are no longer a priority. You have not just lost their love, you have lost their ability to see you as a person they need to take care of. That is a deep, empty hole that can never be filled again, no matter how hard you try. There comes a moment when the person who builds the bridges in an empath's heart decides to stop building. They realize they are building paths for people who only want to set them on fire. For many years, these caring people live in a way that is very, very tiring. They do a lot of hard work with their feelings that nobody ever sees and nobody ever pays them for. They do not just walk into a room, they soak up the feelings of everyone in it like a sponge. They can feel the hidden tension between friends, the sadness that no one wants to talk about, and the quiet anger that is bubbling under the surface. They are like a very sensitive emotional sponge that never gets a break. This is not just something they do for fun or a hobby. It is like a full time job that drains their battery down to zero every single day. They often live under a beautiful but very dangerous idea. They believe that if they just care enough, if they listen for just a little bit longer, or if they take on enough of someone else's pain, they can fix the broken people in their lives. They think they can love someone into being a better person. But this path does not lead to a happy ending or a magical miracle. It leads straight to the caring person falling apart. When they finally hit that wall, everyone around them expects them to have a breakdown. They expect them to collapse or cry for help. But what really happens is much more powerful than a breakdown. It is a breakthrough. Carl Jung understood that when a caring person stops caring in the way they used to, they are not actually becoming a mean or heartless person. They are actually becoming whole for the first time in their life. Up until this point, they have lived a life that was split into tiny pieces. They pushed away any part of themselves that felt selfish or guarded. They spent their whole lives hiding their shadow from the world. The shadow is that darker, protective side of our minds that every human being needs to stay safe. It is not a bad thing, it is a necessary thing. This breakthrough happens when the caring person stops running away from their shadow and finally reaches out to shake its hand. They realize that this side of them is not a monster. It is like finally putting a very strong security system into a house that has had the front door wide open for years and years. This is the part of the soul that knows how to say a very firm no without feeling bad about it the next day. It is the part that can see an emotional vampire coming from a mile away. Those are the people who try to take all your light and energy without ever giving a single thing back to you. The shadow knows exactly how to deal with them. The shadow knows a very hard truth that the polite, nice version of the person was too scared to look at. The truth is that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Not everyone is allowed to have the gold that is hidden inside your heart. By finally accepting this darker, stronger side, the caring person is not turning into a bad guy or a villain. They are simply becoming a person with a backbone made of steel. They are learning that being a good person does not mean you have to be a doormat that everyone steps on with their muddy shoes. It means you are a person who respects yourself enough to say who is allowed in and who must stay out. This change is at the very center of what Jung called individuation. That is just a fancy, scientific sounding way of saying the process of becoming the person you were truly meant to be. During this time, you reach a big fork in the road. You have to make a choice that will change your life. You either choose to keep trying to please the whole world or you choose to save yourself. For someone who has always put other people first, this choice feels like a huge betrayal. They have been told by their families, by the people around them, and by those who treated them badly that putting their own needs first is the definition of being a selfish person. They were taught from the time they were children that their only value in this life was how much they could suffer for other people. They thought that being a martyr was the same thing as being a good person, but Carl Jung showed that this was a lie. He said that leaving yourself behind and ignoring your own needs just to keep other people happy is actually an act of violence against your own soul. It is like a slow motion way of hurting yourself every single day. When a caring person finally stops this cycle of hurting themselves, something amazing and beautiful happens. They do not lose their ability to feel things deeply. They do not lose their kindness or their warmth. Instead, they get something they have never had before: strong boundaries that are as tough as iron. They stop being a sponge that soaks up every bad mood and every problem, and they start being a filter that only lets in what is good and healthy. They trade that endless, exhausting patience, which was really just a lack of self respect, for something Jung called psychological sovereignty. This means they are finally the king or queen of their own heart. They do not ask for permission anymore to protect their own peace of mind. They do not argue or bargain with people who drain their energy. They have finally realized that their energy is like precious money, and they are not going to hand it out for free to people who do not know what it is worth or how to say thank you. This shift into being safe from other people's games is the moment the fog finally lifts from their eyes. It happens very quietly, like a key turning in a lock. For years, the caring person has been pouring all their life, their time, and their sanity into a hole that has no bottom. They kept hoping that if they just poured enough love in, the water would eventually rise to the top and stay there. They have been so tired and so desperate for so long. But then, in one quiet moment where everything becomes clear, they just stop pouring. They put the bucket down and walk away. There is no big explosion or screaming match when they reach this point. There is no dramatic exit or slamming of doors. It is just a silent no inside their heart that changes the very air in the relationship. They simply refuse to let themselves be made smaller anymore. They realize that the hole isn't just empty, it is broken. And no matter how much they give, it will never be fixed by them. This is exactly when things get very cold for the person who is trying to control them. You see, people who use others rely on two things: making you feel guilty and giving you a little bit of hope to keep you around. They keep the caring person tied to them by making them feel like they are responsible for making the other person happy. They also give them just enough hope to think that things will get better if the caring person just tries a little bit harder or waits a little bit longer. It is like an invisible leash that stays tight for many years. But the moment the caring person truly detaches emotionally, they become immune to these tricks. It is as if they have been given a vaccine against the very things that used to hurt them. The poison just doesn't work anymore. Suddenly, the guilt trips that used to keep them awake at night do not even matter to them. When someone calls them selfish or cold, it does not hurt their feelings anymore. It just sounds like static noise on a radio in the background. When this happens, the person who is using them loses their strongest weapons. All those big fake gestures of love that were meant to pull the caring person back in suddenly look very fake and very sad. The caring person can see the strings on the puppet now. They are no longer looking through the eyes of a victim who is being hurt. They are looking through the eyes of a witness who is watching a performance. The leash has not just been let go, it has been cut off at the very start. The other person might try to pull harder or use every trick they know to get a reaction, but they are just pulling on thin air. The hook that used to be in the caring person's chest is gone, so there is nothing left for the manipulator to grab onto. What makes a person who has woken up like this so strong is that they are not acting out of anger or a desire to get revenge. Being angry is still a way of being connected to someone. It is a hot, loud feeling that keeps you tied to the person you dislike. But the person who has truly woken up has moved past anger into something called radical acceptance. They do not hate you. Hating you would take up way too much of their precious energy. Instead, they simply see you for exactly who you are for the first time in the relationship. For many years, they did not see the real you. They saw who you could be, or the person they hoped you would become, if they loved you enough. They were looking at you through a filter of hope and kindness. Now, that filter is gone. They see the patterns of your behavior, the lies you told, and the way you do not care about others with a clarity that is almost scary to look at. In this state, the person finally drops the heavy bag of trying to fix or save you. They have taken off the glasses of compassion that they used to use to make excuses for your bad behavior. They no longer believe the lie that their love is a magic wand that can heal someone who refuses to do any of the work themselves. They see the relationship without any pretty decorations, and they realize there is nothing left to fight for because it was never a real team to begin with. It was always just them doing all the work. In that moment of perfect clarity, the person who was trying to control them loses every bit of power they ever had. You cannot control someone who does not need you to tell them they are good or worthy. You cannot control someone who is no longer afraid of your anger or who no longer believes your lies. The game is over because the caring person has finally realized they were the only one playing for real. They were the only one who cared about the rules. The power of not caring is the final stage of how a person who feels deeply grows up. It is the strongest position a human being can ever be in. This is not a mean or nasty kind of not caring. It is not someone trying to win a game or act tough to impress people. This is a feeling that comes from very deep and hard earned wisdom. When a person who once cared too much finally stops, they do not turn into a villain. They do not have the energy to be mean or to plan revenge. To be honest, they do not think you are worth the effort of holding a grudge. Instead, they simply become unavailable to you. They are gone in their heart, in their spirit, and in their daily life. They do not want revenge because they have learned that the best way to move on is not to hurt you, but to make it so you do not matter anymore. They simply leave the equation of your life, leaving a big empty space that no amount of noise or drama can ever fill again. In this state, the person who has moved on changes how they act in a way that leaves the other person feeling very confused and lost. They stop explaining themselves. They stop trying to defend what is real or what happened. Most importantly, they stop trying to make you understand how they feel. For years, they might have begged you to understand them. They might have sent long, heartfelt messages to explain why they were hurt or stayed up until 3 in the morning trying to fix a problem that wasn't theirs. But now there is only silence. They have nothing left to say. They have reached what Jung called psychological completion. This is when their internal world has become so solid and so strong that they do not need a single bit of your approval to feel okay about themselves. They do not need you to agree with them. They do not need you to see their side of the story. And they definitely do not need your permission to be finished with the relationship. This is the exact moment a caring person becomes truly powerful. People often think, Dangerous means someone who will scream or cause a big scene. But the most dangerous person is the one who has absolutely nothing left to lose to you. They are powerful because they can finally walk away and never look back. There is no apology big enough to reach them now because they no longer care about the words you say. There is no promise that things will be different that can pull them back into the trap because they have finally seen how the trap is built and they know where the exit is. You cannot trick someone who has disconnected their heart from what happens next. The true beauty of this change is that the person has found something much more precious than a hurtful connection with someone else. They have found their way back to themselves. They have realized that their ability to care, to feel, and to help others was never a weakness. It was a very high value gift they were giving away to someone who did not know how to take care of it properly. By taking that gift back, they are finally whole again. They are keeping their gold for themselves and for those who will treat it with respect. Once that gift of care is taken away, the power in the relationship changes forever. You are no longer dealing with a sponge who will soak up your bad moods and make everything okay for you. You are dealing with a person who is their own boss and whom you can no longer change or control with your words. They have returned home to the person they were before the world told them that suffering was the price they had to pay for love. They have realized that love should not hurt this much. When a caring person is done, they are not just leaving you, they are arriving at their own front door and locking it behind them to keep their peace safe. In the end, the withdrawal of a caring person's heart is the loudest silence you will ever have to listen to. It is the moment they realize their light is much too bright to be wasted on someone who only wants to turn it off. They have traded the tired cycle of trying to save everyone else for the wonderful truth of saving themselves. Their leaving is not a declaration of war or a way to get even. It is an act of staying alive. They are not walking away to cause you pain. They are walking away because you no longer have the power to hurt them. This is the final change. The day the emotional sponge becomes something that can never be broken again. It is the day they finally become free.